Welcome to chapter 15 of the book of Exodus. The sons of Israel, children of Israel, have went through the Red Sea on dry land, and Pharaoh's army has been destroyed, flooded, as they tried to follow on the dry land, but the water came over them. After that, we have a song that was made, I suppose, by Moses. It says, "Then they sang, Moises and the sons of Israel, this Odin, ode, transliteration there, to the Kyrio, and said, we should sing to the Kyrio, for gloriously he has glorified." Glory, doxa. Wherever you see anything with doxa in it, there's the verb doxos, endoxos, glorified. And normally we think of somebody glorified, that they're given, put on a high pedestal, and people applaud them, or they make tributes on movies to them, all sorts of things. But the way Lord is glorified is by the destruction of the army of Pharaoh through violence. And he says, horse and rider he tossed into the sea. That would be God. He's the he. Thalason, phylactic, as a derivative. Helper and shelterer he became to me for deliverance. Helper, shelterer, the skipastes, the help, somebody that helps, and he shelters us from the things that come against us every day. Now, he shelters us, but that doesn't mean the things aren't going to come against us. I believe you have to go under a shelter. Now, whether he goes running around and finds us and then puts an umbrella and shelters us, I suppose some would think that, or others would think that, well, the shelter is there, but if you don't go in the shelter, then you're going to be rained on, hit with hail or whatever. I would think it's closer to the second, but that's just my opinion. If I go under his shelter, under his wings, and I consider that his word, then I'm being protected. But once I get out, said, well, I'm not going to be sheltered. I'm going to go out and experience the rain and things that are bad for me. Then that's what I get to do, experience them. But he helps because we are weak. We need a help. Crutch. I believe Jesus is the best crutch there is. Some accuse Christians that Christianity is just a crutch. Well, it is. And it's the best crutch there is. If you want to go through life without any crutch and you're hurting, then you're going to go through a lot of pain. But Jesus is the crutch. He's helping us. We're limping through this life, but we can lean on him. So he became to me for soterion, for deliverance. And Jesus is the helper. There's a famous, I don't know what it is, a story or a poem about the footsteps in the sand, where it was two people, and then I'm not exactly sure how it went, but the idea is that Jesus was carrying the person that needed the help. But he became for deliverance. Soterion, we have salvation in the King James Bible, and save and salvation, which I don't use for this word. I use deliverance, because save is more of a one-time thing. It happens, you're saved from drowning. You're taken up and you're saved. You're not drowning. But here, deliverance is an ongoing process. And he became deliverance. He's the deliverer. He delivers us. This is my God, and I will glorify him. My God is worthy to be glorified. The God of my father, I will exalt him. And here the God of his father, of the paternal Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, is what I would believe that Moses would be talking about if this is who it was doing the singing. The Lord breaking by wars. The Lord is his name. Now, I wasn't not exactly sure what that means. Breaking by wars. He allows wars. The breaking of wars. The Lord is his name. Chariots, armata, armor comes from that word. Chariots of Pharaoh and his dynamine, dynamite, derivative. His force, he tossed into the thalasson. They were epilectus, elect, chosen riders, tristatus, tribunes with a tri, 3/3. He sank in the Red Sea, and we had that map in the last chapter where you saw the Red Sea there, and towards up in the northern part of it is where I think it probably happened. A high sea covered them, and it says that the south wind came and pushed it, the water. So to me, there is that natural part of the occurrence of this episode. But then it says they descended into the deep as a stone. That would be the Pharaoh's army and soldiers. Your right hand, O Lord, has, there again, doxa, has been glorified in strength, and that's the right hand of the might of God, his using his might. Your right hand, O Lord, devastated enemies and striking with the right hand with a blow or a axe or a weapon of some sort. And in the magnitude of your doxis, your glory, you broke the opponents. You sent your orgy comes from that word, as an orgy is a vehement type of actions of people getting all excited. Could be sexual, could be here, and the original was in anger, and it devoured them as stubble. So the anger of God devours as stubble, and I would not want to be a recipient of God's anger, and I would rather be the recipient of God's mercy, for sure. And God has both. He has great mercy, and he has anger. And by the pneummatos, the Spirit is another word that's used for this 4151, pneuma, or air, breath. And by the breath of your rage, the water parted. As a banked up wall were the waters, and the waves were banked up in the midst of the sea. So now it talks about them being banked up. In the last chapter, it says that the wind pushed it up. So I'm thinking, well, if it pushes it up, somehow there's a separation. And if it was God actually separating, like I was saying, well, you see them in the movies where there's just a big wall of water on both sides that could collapse. Well, I suppose that's a possibility also. The enemy said, in pursuing, I shall overtake. I shall portion the spoils. I shall fill up my soul. I will take up my sword. My hand will dominate. So all this feelings of domination by Pharaoh and the enemies to us, I suppose. But he says, you sent your breath, your pneuma, the Spirit to us, the Christians. The sea covered them, so there's the breath of God, that wind, the south wind. They went down as lead in vehement water. So they sank down. Who is likened to you among gods? And I have the small g, because there is only one God. So with the capital G. Homeos, homeopathic, it has to do with something that's likened, equals something. Kyrie, who is likened, homeosi, who is likened to you? There it again, doxa, being glorified among the agies, the holy ones. 39 has to do with holy, agia. Wonderful in doxes, in glories, doing miracles, pion. That would have been the plagues there. And with Jesus, it would have been the miracles that he did. You stretched out your right hand, dexion, that we have ambidextrous, dexta, that has a derivative, that part of that word. You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them. Now, I'm guessing what he's referring here, because water covered them, but the earth being Hades, where the dead bodies go down to eventually. You guided by your righteousness, this your people whom you ransomed. He ransomed Israel. Now, a ransom is generally somebody pays a person money to release somebody. Famous ransom that was with King Richard. Was it Richard? The Lion-Hearted. Was captured by the Saracens, the Muslims, and the Crusades, and King John in England could care less because he's now king, his brother, but yet Robin Hood wanted to get this money up together so they could get him out of the prison that he was in, which they eventually did. It's all in the story of Robin Hood. But here, whom you ransomed, God ransomed. Now, I believe the ransom goes, to me, it goes something like this. Let's say this man, Joe Smith, was a terrible person, and you had two sons. You loved them both, and this Joe Smith killed one of the sons, murdered him. And then they found out it was him, and he was arrested and then sentenced to prison by the judge and was sentenced to life in prison. So Joe Smith, being in prison, had a change. He had a repentance that he was sorry for what he did, a true repentance, not a fake one, but he really did. And so he wrote to you. He had the two sons originally, and said that he was sorry that everything that he did, he's changing his life in prison, and he asks for your forgiveness. So you're in this position. So now you would want to get, let's say then you realize that this Joe Smith is changed, and you feel sorry for him. You have your mercy. So you decide to write and find out how you can get Joe Smith out of jail. And basically, this is what happened with us. We are terrible people. We have sinned greatly. We have been sentenced to be with Satan in prison in Hades. But yet, the ones that have truly forgiven and asked God for forgiveness, then we can reach out to God, and God can ransom us from this prison that we are in, which is held by Satan. And so what does Satan want? Well, he wants us, of course, but if to release us, he, I believe, had it set up that he wanted the death of this man's other son, the only son left. And that son would have been God's Son, Jesus Christ. So what did God do? Because he loved Joe Smith, he loved us, then he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to Satan to die, and he went down into Hades for 3 days, from what I can gather in the Bible here, and then he had power to be raised up from the dead ones, and came out, and the ransom was paid. Jesus has conquered death and has brought us to victory, even though we were terrible sinners. So these people you guided by your righteousness. It wasn't theirs. And this people whom you ransomed, and he ransomed them from basically out of Egypt, and got them out of Egypt. And the firstborn son was killed. And then he uses that as a ransom for the rest of Israel, to give him a ransom of, was in the last chapter, I believe, of the firstborn son. You aided in your strength, in your holy lodging. There's agion again, holy. Ethne, nations heard, ikuson, acoustics, derivatives, and were provoked to anger, the ones around hearing what's going on, and pangs took hold of the ones dwelling the Philistines, which was straight across from where from Egypt, where the sons of Israel could have went, but they were sidetracked by God to go in a circle. And then hastened the princes of Edom, and the rulers of the Moabiton, the Moabites, which were on the other side of the Jordan and the Dead Sea, where they were going to go. That is the children of Israel. And trembling took hold of them, Edom, Moabites, Philistines. They melted away. All the ones dwelling in Canaan, and they have the Jebusites, the Girgasites, all these different 7 nations, I think there were. And then it continues, may fear and trembling fall upon them. By the greatness of your arm, they're petrified, and until whenever your people may go by, O Lord, until whenever this your people may go by, which you acquired. And they have a fear of Israel. I believe they still have a fear of Israel today. Small country. These countries have come against it three times, I believe, and been defeated. And they have a righteous fear of Israel still. In bringing them in, children of Israel, plant them in your mountain of inheritance, into your prepared home which you manufactured, O Lord, a sanctuary, O Lord, which you prepared by your hands. Now, what is this place he's talking about? Because basically, the sanctuary in Jerusalem was manufactured by men and prepared, put together by them. But preparing this place, the mountain of your inheritance, I believe he's talking about the New Jerusalem, possibly, and wherever the people are going to be with the Lord. The Lord, Vasilevon, Basilica, the reigning, Kyrios, Vasilevon, Iston, Aeona, into the Eon, and unto the Eon, and still. So people that write me and they have a problem with eons, they don't like the word eternal, everlasting, because I guess they don't like to think about going to Hades for everlasting if you're sinned and you go there. So the best thing to do is to say that word doesn't mean what it means. It doesn't mean forever or eternal. It just means for a certain period of time. But God is not a God of just a certain period of time. He's a reignings into the eon, and unto the eon here you can see it, and still. So eternal, everlasting, the words are indescribable for how long, this period, or whatever you want to call it. For hippopotamus, the horse of Pharaoh entered with armacy and riders into the Thalason, and Kyrios brought upon them the ether of the sea, the water of the sea, hydraulics, ether, hydro, edr. But the sons of Israel went through dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam, the prophetess, as a transliteration, the Adelphi of Aaron, took the tympanon. A tympany is a musical instrument. You boom, 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 yeah, in an orchestra, and they have mallets, and it's very used a lot in bolero. Boom, 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 boom. Anyway, the timpani, so the tambourine is what they're beating on. It's a percussion instrument with their inner hand. Hiri, chiropractor, chiro. And came forth all the Ginecus, women after her, with tympanon. And horon, choreography, dancers, comes from choreography, a dance company, dancers. And Miriam led them, saying, we should sing to the Lord, to Kyrio, for gloriously, there's the endoxos, he has glorified himself. horse and rider he tossed into the sea. So I'm sure there's a song in Israel that they sing this. I don't know the song, but it'd be nice to know what it was. And then it switches, and Moses lifted up the sons of Israel from the Red Sea. So now they're up there at the Red Sea, and let me see if I can find real quick here. Sinai, here it is, here. The Red Sea is here, and I believe they went over here. So if they went across, then they're over in this area over here. This is what I'm guessing, the wilderness of Shur. He led them into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness, so they couldn't have been very far, 1,000,000 people in 3 days. So they had to be in that area over there. And they did not find water so as to drink, a very dry area. When they came unto Mara in the King James, and they were not able to drink either from out of Marah, for it was bitter. Now, it does call this lake up here the Bitter Lake. And if they actually crossed over here and this was actually still called the Red Sea, that's a possibility. But this was called the Bitter Lake. Or maybe it was, yeah. So it's all interesting. You can do a lot of studying of these places on the internet. On account of this, the name of that place was named Pikria, bitter. And it's interesting that that lake would still be called the Bitter Lake. And the people complained unto Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And Moses yelled to Kirion, and Kirio showed to him a tree, Xilon. And he put it into the Ethor, the water, and the water was sweetened. Here he established with him ordinances and judgments, and there he tested him. And God tests people right here. I think the head of the Roman Catholic Church said something about God doesn't test. I guess he doesn't read the Bible. There he established with him ordinances and judgments, and there he tested him. Ordinances and judgments he established in there. Now, could be talking about the future when they get to Sinai. I'm not sure. It says, in there he tested him, so he could have tested him there, but the laws and the ordinance could be in Sinai. I'm not sure. Or did they actually have ordinances and judgments there at Marah? And he said, if you should hear the voice of the Lord your God, which they will in Sinai, and you should do the things pleasing before him, and you should give ear to his commandments, which will be on Sinai, and you should guard all his ordinances, which will be given to Moses on Sinai, then every disease which was brought upon the Egyptians I will not bring upon you. For I am Kyrios, healing you. And they came into Elim, and were there 12 springs of waters, and 70 trunks of Phoenix. The city of Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States, means palm, city of palms. And they camped there by the waters, so some type of a oasis, apparently, because of these palms and so forth. And you see these oases throughout the areas, in these wilderness areas. Underground water comes up and springs up and makes little springs and pools, and trees grow right by them. Animals come, and very beautiful. So now we're going to leave the people there at Elim and find out in the next video seminar, chapter 16, of what happens to them there. Hope you'll join us and find out. God bless.